Conquer the Noise is a podcast produced by Unconquered, an independent agency challenging brand perspective through redefined content. This podcast is dedicated to telling stories of outstanding ideas and people who have found their way amongst the chatter. But we did run into a few technical issues where phone dropped, we lost signal, we went in and out. So you may notice on the final record that you're listening to today that there may be a few hiccups in there or bumps in the editing. We did our best to make it as smooth as possible for you. Welcome. I'm Jonathan Hansen, Chief Creative Officer at Unconquered, and I'm your host of Cultivating Purpose and Passion in Business. Today we're speaking with Sid Sharma, who is a co-founder of Wild Kombucha. Sid, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sid, last time I saw you was, 2016, 2017 at the Goldman Sachs Small Business Conference. It's been a while. What's going on? Catch me up.
Yeah, it's been definitely a fruitful couple of years for us. We've continued to grow at right around that 100% growth rate. And now we're in about 1,200 stores across 9 states, the bigger ones being Whole Foods and Mom's Organic. Since then, we actually also launched another product, which is our Acaro Yerba Mate tea, which is just starting to hit stores. And, for us, it's exciting because it allows us to produce other unique products that are better for you beverages.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. And congrats on the success. Were you just launching when we first met?
So we launched in February 2015 out of the side of a juice shop in Baltimore. And, we continued to grow very organically, knocking on doors of local spots. So when we first met, actually, we had just outgrown that juice shop and moved in our first brewery, which was in Timonium, which is about 3,400 square feet. So since then, we've actually moved to another brewery here in Northwest Baltimore, which is about 13,000 square feet.
So what was the connection to the juice shop? Is it still around?
It is. It's actually now Bluebird Cafe in Hamden.
Okay. I know where that is.
Yeah.
I've moved from Baltimore and now I'm in New York, but I still go back often. I still love the city and the culture there and the community. And I feel like it's really supportive, especially for small businesses and people like you and I who are trying to do something new and different. And it sounds like you've had a lot of great success there. Tell me, there's a lot of kombucha on the market right now. I think some people know what it is. Some people don't. It's a funny sounding beverage. So what is kombucha? And am I saying it right? Because I've been corrected several times on pronunciation.
Kombucha. Yeah. So kombucha is a probiotic drink made from fermenting tea with what is known as a SCOBY. It's an acronym for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. So, basically we make tea just like you would on the stove. We add the SCOBY to it. This ferments the tea for, a couple weeks. And at the end, we have our kombucha base. And then we add small amounts of different organic juices to create our different flavors.
And so there's often health benefits touted, detoxing, builds your microbiome, immunity support. I looked at your packaging and you guys don't really seem to really hammer on that health, that magic health elixir, which I think is great because sometimes when I read the labels of products like vitamins, supplements, other sort of healthy drinks, it can kind of come across as scammy or ingenuine. So when I was familiar with the product actually before we met, but that's one of the things that always sort of drew me to your brand.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we take the claims we make very seriously. Obviously, I believe in the health benefits of kombucha. I can feel it when I drink it and consume it. But I think at the end of the day, we're a very data-driven company. My background, actually, prior to the company, while I was in college, I was doing pancreatic cancer research at Johns Hopkins. So any claims related to health, I take extremely seriously. And I think at its core, into the mainstream, I think the thing that makes kombucha the most appealing is that it is a low sugar, low calorie, in our case, organic alternative to soft drinks and others, and sodas and things like that.
So when you earlier in the evolution of the company, how long was it before you decided to quit your job in research and go straight into full-time kombucha making?
So actually, prior to quitting my job, I was doing energy consulting. So I went from undergrad to grad school, where I studied environmental management with a focus in entrepreneurship, and then started working for a firm focused on energy projects in large commercial buildings. So we started the company in February 2015, and on August 10th, 2015, I quit my job.
Oh wow, you knew right away. That's amazing.
It's a very quick turnaround, about 6 months. And really the we got a call from Whole Foods asking to start putting us in a couple of the local stores. And for us, that was the sign we needed to really, really dive in.
Did your environmental education, environmental energy, has that really helped with designing and building out your fermentation and production process?
We definitely took into account when sourcing things, and the type of equipment we use. We always look for the energy ratings, the efficiency ratings, because I have gone through that lead process. So whenever possible, yes. But at the end of the day, obviously we're still in a merit-owned building, so there is a limit on the changes we can make.
And so you have two other co-founders. How did you meet them, and how did they get wrapped into this?
Yeah, so we've all known each other since we were 14 years old. We all grew up in the Baltimore area. Me and Sergio actually went to high school together, and Adam is his brother. So Adam was actually the first one of us that was making kombucha and selling it. Sergio and Adam, their family, was making kombucha since they were very young, 8, 9 years old. And I would go over to their house, and there were, batches fermenting in their kitchen when really no one knew what kombucha was. It definitely wasn't really in the market here on the East Coast. And Adam started, so their parents left the country and left the equipment with Adam. He started selling, the product to local people, some students from Johns Hopkins, and Sergio moved in with him, and they had this idea to start a company. And at the time, I was still living in North Carolina, and really, the stars aligned. I ended up landing a job back in Maryland, and we were like, okay, this will be a fun side project. It's like brewing with friends. We'd be brewing kombucha. Good excuse to hang out, do something different. Use our creativity. And next thing we knew, a bunch of stores were asking for it, and we started taking it more seriously.
And so it's definitely exploded. And now I'm seeing kombucha cocktail mixers. I'm seeing kombucha on tap that has alcohol in it. I'm seeing, I go into Whole Foods and they have 50 feet of drinks in the refrigerator. How are you standing out amongst all that competition?
Yeah, so on the flavor side, we pride ourselves on making a more approachable, well-balanced kombucha. So if a first-time drinker grabs a bottle and they grab our kombucha, they're able to enjoy it. But also a seasoned drinker can as well, because we really kind of maintain that essence of what kombucha is. You have a little bit of that tanginess, a little bit of that almost like vinegar-like tone, but it's not overwhelming. So that's on the flavor side. On the product side, we're a local product priced like a national player. And that's very intentional. We want to make the price point attainable for people. And then also we wanted to make the label as approachable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't like you mentioned, it doesn't look like some crazy health elixir. It really just looks like a craft soda. And that's very intentional. So tying those two, as well as our regional cause and our focus on with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, to impact the local community, I think has resulted in people, specifically in the Mid-Atlantic, grabbing our bottles off the shelf.
So how did you align yourself with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation? It was because your product is so dependent on clean water? Is it because of just the relationship of growing up in Maryland with the Bay? What inspired that relationship?
Yeah, so it honestly boils down to both of those things you mentioned. For us, the product inside the bottle, the majority of it is water. But also, the beverage industry or any food product is inherently not super friendly to the environment because we require packaging. We require glass bottles. So we wanted to give back in some way to counteract that impact. And we thought, what better partner than someone that positively impacts the environment we sell in, the environment we live in, when we go out on the water or we go for a hike ourselves.
Do you have other initiatives or things that you're doing as a company to help reduce your footprint?
Yeah, so one huge thing for us is the fact that we only produce in glass bottles. Just due to the number of cycles glass bottles can be recycled, it is a little bit more environmentally friendly. Also, obviously, in the off chance that a glass bottle does end up in a landfill, or even worse, in a body of water, it doesn't have the same negative impacts when it breaks down as plastic. The other piece is our products are certified organic. So we are requiring our suppliers, which tend to be, farmers that grow different products and have them juiced, or, tea growers, to operate with a different standard and, not spray their products with certain chemicals. Within our production as well, we exclusively use green cleaning products, and make sure that we're not throwing away too much. We recycle boxes whenever possible. We'll pick them up from clients and reuse them.
That's great. Kombucha, I always saw in like yoga studios or in places where there is an emphasis on healthy eating, clean diet, clean lifestyle. So in some ways, I can really see like your product fitting in as a lifestyle product in some ways. And I'm curious, like how you're building that culture and finding that audience, and getting your brand to sort of fit in and work within that realm.
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally our brand is a reflection on who we are in general. And, us three founders, as well as our team, we very much live that lifestyle. The vast majority of my friends are vegetarian. Being from Maryland, every once in a while, I got to sneak in a crab cake. But I think it comes down to the culture you build early. For us, Adam comes from a very strong arts background, as well as Amanda, our operations manager. So naturally, we're tied deeply into that community. I think our personalities are shown in the product, and that's really, in general, where that market fit comes from. On top of that, we took, from a marketing standpoint, though, we took an approach where we really saturated the areas we entered to build brand awareness so people could learn about the brand. So when we decide to enter a city, we focus on a certain neighborhood and we make sure we're in at least a few locations there. So people that live there start to recognize it or see it around, and you really build curiosity to try it.
And so you're really focused right now on the Northeast. Is there plans, or are you currently expanding across the country?
So on the kombucha side of the business, we want to keep it a regional brand. The main reason for that is actually the quality of the product. So since kombucha is a living product. The more times it's out of not at the right temperature, or the more people that handle the bottle, the quality of it can deteriorate by the time it reaches the customer.
Mm-hmm.
With our current model, and by limiting the distance, not only do we maximize our shelf life, but when someone tastes the product, it's right at that perfect to be. If it's really late in the shelf life, the culture will continue to consume the sugar in the product, and you'll end up with a drier kombucha. Versus if it's too early, it'll be a little bit sweeter. So we really focus on maintaining that perfect point.
Mm-hmm. What I love about some of the other efforts you're doing is you've really have focused, and I think it's very closely tied to the idea of being staying regionally outside of just the product reasons, but building that community locally. What kind of projects are you working on right now in Baltimore or the Baltimore area as far as trying to build a community and get people together?
Yeah, so one huge initiative we've started is with living classrooms.
Uh-huh.
So 1% of all sales of our Acaro tea goes to living classrooms, and they're an incredible organization based in Baltimore. Their focus is we love them because their focus is not only on younger people, but it goes through to the whole community, and it's all about helping students learn different skills, but also providing after school care. They provide job training, resume training, really giving people the tools to change their situation, change their position
Mm-hmm.
in Baltimore. So, we've volunteered with them, been physically there ourselves, but also we'll invite our retail partners to come volunteer with us. Last year we did a few Chesapeake Bay cleanups, and we always make sure to bring as many people in that we've touched with our products.
Mm-hmm. So we were speaking before we started recording today about COVID, and it's been obviously a topic of conversation for everyone, and it has been on this podcast because I think it really has provided an opportunity for brands and companies to connect with their customers and potential customers in a more meaningful way, because there's definitely a greater need right now. A less selling, more community. And I'm curious to how you guys have been dealing with COVID. I know a lot of your products are sold in cafes. They're sold in restaurants. So how are
Yeah.
you shifting? Yeah. So how are you shifting, and how are you trying to keep that community going, your community going?
Yeah, I think one huge way we just kept communicating with our community was via social media.
Mm-hmm.
For us, we're a very transparent company. We're very honest in terms of what's going on with us. And we really did reach out to our community for help. We were in a position where when those restaurants and those cafes all closed, we were down about 65% of our revenue.
Wow.
So we pivoted to offering home deliveries of our kombucha, and our audience really responded. That allowed us to really keep going, and keep our head above water until this started to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big piece of that is because we also look to our community when we're doing well. So we allow the people who drink our product to play a huge part in our decision making. Whether it's the switch to clear bottles that we just recently made, that was large in part to a lot of our fans telling us that they felt like they were drinking a beer at work and getting funny looks. Or we've even had fans vote on what our next flavor should be, like what we should have on tap at a festival. I think really just bringing people into the experience of growing and running the business has really helped us, and in the case of COVID, allowed us to survive.
Mm-hmm. I want to keep this conversation going about the culture and everything, but I have a question on the color of the bottle going clear. Does the light impact the lifespan of the probiotics in it?
So UV light does. So like a
Uh-huh.
a general light won't. And, we looked at tons of our stores, tons of locations of coolers, and we realized that we didn't even find a single one that was actually being physically hit by sunlight.
Okay.
Um, so it also allowed us to display the beautiful colors of our different flavors, and really make the product pop on the shelf.
Yeah, because you do the color of the I don't want to say juice, but the liquid is really beautiful, and you can tell it's pure. It's not full of sugar and a lot of other byproducts. So I think that's a great idea. But going back into talking through some of that culture, you've really grown now over the years. You're bringing team members on. How are you building culture within your own business?
Yeah. So for us, I really attribute our culture to our team and the people we initially brought on.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, like I mentioned before, the culture is a reflection of who we are and how we've established the brand in general. So just like our personalities are in the product, the culture we've built is very much a part of what we laid down early on. So a couple of the values we really focus on are obviously community and creativity are the two big ones for us. We really encourage people to think outside the box and come up with crazy ideas. Are we going to pursue them all? No, because that's impossible. But we'll entertain any idea, and we encourage people to think about different aspects of the business, even if that's not their core competency. And that's resulted in always having fresh pairs of eyes on different components of the business and allowed us to grow and better ourselves in general.
So what is, when creativity is one of those words, I think it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly is creativity. There's all sorts of philosophical conversations you can have around creativity. Can science be, can math be creative? So when we're talking about creative within the development of kombucha and your new products, what is the research and design side of your business look like? Are you guys just kind of staying up late, having a few beers and experimenting in the kitchen, or is it more of a very like serious and a process that's full of rigid standards to keep things uniform?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of both. Some of our flavors, especially early on, were very much we're having a couple beers and we see a product that's on tap, or a certain flavor of a different product, and are inspired. For example, our watermelon hops kombucha was very much inspired by Heller High Watermelon, that beer. Or but in some cases it's a little bit more rigid, as in we'll always have about 8 to 10 flavors developing that we're working on, that we're trying to make better. And we'll almost do it bracket style, right? Different flavors will get eliminated because it's not as good as the other ones, or it brings something unique to our current offerings. Anything we bring out at this point, we want to make sure that it is bringing something unique to the table that we didn't have before. I think a perfect example is our upbeat kombucha, which is our most recent flavor. Not only does it bring like this beautiful, vibrant, like magenta color, but it also is a little bit more earthy from that beet tone that we didn't have in our other flavors.
So when you are, as someone who has hired people, regular hires people, what are you looking for in your team to help add to your culture there? How are you evaluating potential applicants, and what are you thinking about when bringing people on?
Yeah, I think one thing we look for, and that's extremely important to us, is that anyone we bring on, we want them to be passionate about something. Because we think that translates into the way you do other things, the way you operate at work. It doesn't have to relate to kombucha in any way. We have people who are passionate about photography, people who are passionate about improv or stand-up comedy. You know, I think that also fosters, we mentioned creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has an outlet where they are thinking in a different way than we normally think here, and they can bring that process, bring that perspective in our doors, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes a huge difference. I think creativity at the end of the day is all perspective and how you apply the experiences you've had in your life or the things you've seen. So the more people we bring in from different backgrounds who've had different experiences, we can bring a different approach to the way we do things.
Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about sustainability on the show, and sustainability obviously can take on all different realms. We spoke recently with someone who said that sustainability is just kind of like treading water, just kind of keeping it up enough to keep going instead of rejuvenating, which I thought was a really interesting perspective. Um, looking back or looking on your own business and sustainability, you obviously have the environmental side, but just I'm really driving home on this idea of culture, because I think your product and what you guys are doing is really a part of a culture, and is a cultural product. How are you sustaining that inside your own business, and actually encouraging the growth, and keeping that vision alive?
Yeah, I think, we're a very horizontally structured company.
Mm-hmm.
So people feed off of the energy of, specifically us three founders, but also in general, the upper management. So I think when the team sees us getting our hands dirty or us hopping on at the bottling line when someone needs to fill in a role, I think that really sets that tone for the team and keeps that culture growing outwards that, if someone else in our company needs help and you happen to have a little bit of bandwidth, you jump in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really setting the tone from the top is one huge piece of it for us. Um, so much of culture, I think, comes down to the people you put around you. That's the first people. That's the first part of your network that's out into the world, right? Sharing your brand story, sharing who you are and your company culture. From there, it grows outwards, and the energy and passion with which it's passed on to the next person, is probably a little bit less until it dwindles and then it doesn't get passed on. So
Mm-hmm.
the more passion those initial people have when sharing the story or even talking to an employee on their first day, that's the level it starts at and it gets passed down from there. So that's how I
Mm-hmm.
think we've been able to really sustain a strong culture within the company and outside of it in terms of the perception of who we are and what we do.
And are you doing a lot of advertising? I'm always really interested in how brands can get out into their communities without huge advertising budgets. Obviously we're focused on a marketing agency, um, and our clients' budgets range, but they always start. You always got to start somewhere. And I'm curious how you, for people who aren't ready to take on agencies or marketing consultants, um, how you've managed and worked with that early on.
Yeah. So for us, it was very grassroots. We just made sure that any content we were posting represented us in some way, but also was a little bit captivating. That's a huge part of Instagram and Facebook is just
Mm-hmm.
something has to pop off of a page. Um, it's just I think it's just about making sure that when you connect with someone in person, because that's where you put most of your bandwidth early on in marketing, demoing in stores, that you encourage them to also interact with you guys digitally. And
Mm-hmm.
that was really how we grew our following initially. Other than boosting posts or like running ads in specific areas for a couple $100s, we still don't do much advertising. It's still very
Mm-hmm.
much, word of mouth, boots on the ground. We'll have merchandisers go into stores, give a couple people hats or talk to them, share our brand story, give the staff some free bottles so they've tasted the product, they know how to talk about it. We still are firm believers that in-person interaction means so much more than reaching someone digitally in a fleeting way. So we try to really lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the challenge is I can't reach as many people physically. So
Yeah.
at some point, we will lean more into that advertising, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's just an ongoing challenge, regardless of how big your business is, how you create those digital environments to accurately represent what you're doing. That experiences that the user is having is representative, and if one doesn't have tech issues, or it's translating, communicating, which poses a whole bunch of challenges in itself. And since this is your own business and it is a personal pursuit and something that has come from like a deeper passion, how are you navigate challenges as a business owner, and also as like in a group setting where you have two other co-founders?
Yeah, I think we've divided the company really into a couple core competencies that we've basically allocated as our expertise. So my focus is really the finance, marketing, and supply chain side of the business. So when it comes to anything within that, Adam and Sergio will, default to me first, and then obviously we'll still discuss it. Versus the
Mhm.
operations and R&D side is Adam is the lead. So, we'll default to him if we can't really make a decision, but we'll always discuss any major decisions and really just vote amongst the three. We joke that we're always thankful that there's three of us and not two of us.
Mhm.
And you have a tiebreaker.
Yeah, I mean, there's the way our agency is structured. We have two of us, there's Brian and I.
Yeah,
But I feel like we've established a really strong way of communicating. That there's certain cases that if one of us is really adamant about, the other person will likely back down and give a little bit. There's always that give and take, right? You can't fight about everything, or I shouldn't say fight, but argue about everything. You can't stand on every hill and have your way. It's like any relationship where there's going to be a lot of give and take and compromise. And
absolutely.
I think, yeah, and I think for us, we have found a way, like our personalities are different enough to where they work together, and it's not we're not having the same thing. I don't think it's going to do your business any favor from a leadership standpoint. So having two different perspectives, but yet they're close enough, and where we don't necessarily deviate. And I think that all goes back down to like sharing similar values,
Hmm.
and finding a team that at the heart of it, you have similar a foundation of beliefs, and from that, I think keeping that like North Star can help alleviate any sort of like major conflict. How is there are there have you had your moments where you had to bring in that third opinion to tie break, and sort of be a buffer?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, whenever we're building something or whenever anyone's building something, you're doing it for the first time. There's no playbook.
Hmm.
There's no absolute right answer to things that you will approach. So as opinions differ, the way we like to handle it is obviously we all have the best intentions for the business, for each other. Um, so we'll discuss each side and why we think one approach is better than the other. And at the end, we'll simply vote. I mean, I think over time you get a lot better at letting things go, but also seeing perspectives outside of your own. Because at the end
Hmm.
of the day, if I firmly believe that we should be, putting up a billboard on 83, there's always at least a few good reasons why we should.
Hmm.
Uh, so just making sure to keep an open mind, and I think that also just in general has made us better leaders within our company and work better with our managers who also have their own opinions. And I think it's important to respect those opinions and really hear them out.
So I know, I think for all of us, these last like 6 months have been really challenging, emotionally, mentally. Um, and I'm curious how you've dealt with that as a business and how have helped support your employees and staff a bit, and kept spirits high.
Yeah, for us, I mean, it definitely, like I mentioned before, it's been a really, really challenging few months. I think the biggest thing for us, it just comes down to belief.
Mm-hmm.
It's been extremely, extremely hard, but in general, what we are doing,
Mm-hmm.
making health beverages more accessible and approachable is extremely important. Beyond that, it is the belief in us. We have to establish, a positive morale, and our team knows that we'll always protect the team and do what is necessary for the company to survive and build and move on. And we thought it was important to do the little things like, yeah, we might be in the middle of COVID and we may have had to dwindle the team down pretty significantly, but we should still do our team happy hour or have our company wide meeting to discuss what's going on. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of companies, when you're in that position, you're like, no, it's go time. Like that has to go out the window. But I think us making sure to keep those things made a world of difference.
Mm-hmm. Um, you know, speaking of like health and mental health, I think product trends are often representative of, are like a kind of like an unspoken, um, I guess, analysis of way people are thinking. And we've definitely seen a big uptick in like health beverages, right? Beverages, drinks, products, food products that are really geared towards like healthy lifestyles. What do you think that says about this, like a larger societal culture and change?
Yeah, I think it's tied to a greater awareness about our bodies and
Mm-hmm.
people wanting to be more proactive instead of reactive with their health, right? I think the
Mm-hmm.
generation before us was very much the I have a problem, is there a pill for it? And I
Mm-hmm.
think our generation is much more of, I have to take care of my body, this is the vessel I have for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the uprising of smaller beverage brands and smaller food brands, I think comes down to people wanting to support local, people wanting to support things that are unique, and to a degree lean away from, those monstrous food companies, whether it's your General Mills or Coca-Cola or Pepsi.
Well, it seems like there's a greater distrust of larger companies now. Now that we're reading labels and seeing what's in there, it seems like there's just a bigger distrust of what they're putting in. I mean, if you can't pronounce it, I don't know if you should be eating it. So that's kind of the way I look at when I'm grocery shopping and I'm reading labels, because I think
Exactly.
you really should be actively reading the label, before you ingest it. Um, and I mean that's honestly how I got and discovered kombucha. Was reading labels, and I mean, the first time I tried it, it had that stronger vinegar taste. It didn't dissuade me from it, but I enjoyed it. But it all gets back to like that experience you have with that product in the store. Um, Speaking of health and sustainability, um, do you think there's like a tie there? What's the relationship between our personal health and maintaining like an environmentally or a sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah, I think there's a huge connection. You know,
Mm-hmm.
agriculture and food and production is such a large portion of our carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we eat and the way we source responsibly has such a large impact. A perfect example, right, is something like palm oil, and the amount of greenhouse gas emissions from sourcing that irresponsibly versus responsibly. Like I mentioned, the chemicals from spraying pesticides and the effect of that runoff. Um, it's enormous, and I think also when someone starts to read labels like you did, they start to realize what are they or don't realize because they don't understand what the chemicals are that's going into their food that they're putting into their bodies. Um, and I think when you start to eat food, more sustainable food or more organic food, a lot of those companies tend to have relationships to sustainability because it's something they care about. For us, if climate continues to change, that'll completely alter our sourcing. You're seeing larger companies like Starbucks realize that the beans they source will be more and more difficult as climate continues to change, or they'll have to find different farms.
Sid, you're of Indian descent, correct?
Yeah.
So how has your cultural background really pushed forward your efforts in your business? And I'm always really fascinated about how way people were brought up, their relationship with food at home. What their how did the meals look on their table, and since you create food products, I think it's really interesting to tie those things together. So I'm really curious to see how that has influenced your work.
Definitely. So I'm first generation American. Both my parents are from India. And I definitely had that classic first generation kid experience where, you
Hmm.
know, I ate Indian food every day at home. And, I'd be at school and my mom packed me Indian food. And I'd be like, man, I wish I just had a peanut butter and jelly like the other kids. And then you grow
Hmm.
up and you realize how cool it was that I got
Hmm.
to have that experience. And I think, being a first generation American definitely impacted my work ethic and my drive and, not taking the things for granted. This is an incredible place where, me and two other guys who have no experience in beverage can just start making drinks and it turns into this. Like, that's
Hmm.
phenomenal. But I also
Hmm.
think our cultural background between me, Sergio, and Adam um, definitely has impacted the product and our openness to trying, in sourcing juices that people in the U.S. might not be as familiar with. I think a great
Hmm.
example is our best-selling flavor is our elderberry kombucha. You know, we're sourcing it from Switzerland, and you know, Adam's main experiences with elderberry was in Sweden. So we're able to kind of bring those cultural experiences um, into the product as well.
Hmm. Um, as we wrap up our conversation here, I think you touched on it a little bit about working hard. Your work ethic, how you being first generation has really inspired and pushed you to create something here. Um, and speaking, I guess, think just out to the entrepreneurial community. Um, what advice do you have for people who are starting a business or want to start a business?
I think the main advice I think I'd have for someone is, first of all, do it. Because I think if you have an idea that you firmly believe could become a business, you should go for it. I think at the end of the day, your worst case scenario is you'll learn a lot. Uh,
Hmm.
your best case scenario is, you pursued a dream and you had the opportunity to see that grow. For us, we're still very much in a position where our company is more likely to fail than to be around 100 years from now. That's
Hmm.
just truth. But the amount that we've learned and grown as people, we'll have that forever. So the main piece of advice is definitely go for it. The other piece is trust your gut. Trust when you're starting a business. Often you'll approach an industry you may not have been in, and the natural reaction is to, if you're talking to someone with 15 years of experience, take them at their word and be like, oh, that's how you do it. We approach it very differently. We're like, hey, like we're building this our way. We're doing it in a very different way. Most
Hmm.
companies don't manage their own distribution, because that's a crazy way to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
But down the road, it's paid off, tenfold for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really just trusting yourself to make the right decisions and grow it your way.
So right now you're doing home delivery, so you can place orders through your website.
Yeah, so you can place orders through mobtownfermentation.com. And then obviously, also we're selling in tons of stores.
Awesome. All right, Sid. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's great talking to you. Great catching up. It's awesome to see you grow and succeed, especially since I met you 3 or so years ago, and we were both in similar boats. And just knowing the labor of love that it is to see success, it's always fantastic. So, congratulations, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the time. Take care.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. I do apologize, and thank you for bearing with us on a few technical mishaps on this one. We dropped calls, had some internet issues, it goes in and out. We did our best to edit it over. I hope it was a smooth transition for you. We always welcome your feedback. Please email us at hi@weunconquered.co. You can also rate us on Apple, and please subscribe. We're also on Spotify. Thank you so much.